Kale had always been curious about the citadel that floated above the clouds like a forgotten memory. Its spires reached for the stars, and its walls shimmered as though woven from threads of light itself. Locals whispered that the place was alive, that it remembered those who entered and judged them silently. Kale, a scholar with a restless heart and a hunger for knowledge, could not resist. On the eve of the solstice, when the moon hung like silver fire in the sky, he stepped through the forest that surrounded the citadel. The trees seemed to lean away as if afraid of the path he had chosen. Each step toward the great doors echoed through the silence, a quiet drumbeat of anticipation. Kale's hand trembled slightly as he reached the entrance. The doors were tall, carved with sigils that twisted and shimmered like living things. Some shapes resembled stars, others hinted at eyes that watched him even when he thought he was alone. The air hummed with a strange energy that made his skin prickle. He took a deep breath. There was no turning back. The doors swung open with a soft, knowing sigh. Inside, the hallway was vast and shadowed, yet the walls glimmered with faint, otherworldly light. The air smelled of rain on stone, and faint music seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Kale walked carefully, each step awakening whispers that twined around him like invisible threads. At the end of the hall, a single door stood, unlike any other. It was framed by twisting metal and a faint glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. Kale's curiosity drew him closer, even as a part of him warned against it. The sigils on the door shimmered and shifted, almost like they were alive, whispering in a language he could not understand. Yet he felt that if he turned away now, he might never return. With a steady hand, he pushed the door open. Inside, the room was vast, but it was not empty. Two figures stood at the far end, illuminated by a soft, silvery light that seemed to come from their very being. Their forms were humanoid, yet they shimmered like they belonged partly to another world. Their hair flowed as though moved by a gentle wind that existed only around them, and their eyes reflected countless stars, as if entire galaxies dwelled within them. Kale felt his breath catch. Something deep inside him, fear, awe, and something else he could not name, shifted in his chest. He realized almost too late that he had entered a space not meant for mortals. The two women, as though sensing his thoughts, did not speak immediately. They watched him, their gazes both gentle and probing, like they could see every secret corner of his soul. Who are you?" Kale finally managed to ask, his voice trembling. Lyra, the taller of the two, stepped forward, her movements fluid, almost floating rather than walking. "We are guardians of what you seek," she said, her voice a melodic echo that seemed to wrap around him. "And yet, not all knowledge comes without cost." Every instinct told him to retreat, to run back through the hall and escape this strange, impossible room. Yet his curiosity, that restless scholar's heart, urged him forward. Something about these women drew him in, as if they were a puzzle he was meant to solve. I didn't mean to intrude," he said. I thought this place held knowledge, hidden truths." He felt the weight of it and could not answer immediately. Saren moved closer, and Kale noticed that the space between them seemed to bend slightly, as if her presence reshaped the very air. "Many come seeking truth," she said, "but few can bear what it reveals. And yet, there is something in you that might endure, something rare. That is why the door opened for you." He realized then that this was no ordinary room, no ordinary encounter. He had crossed into a world that obeyed rules he could not yet comprehend. The door behind him, which he had expected to remain open, now seemed to have disappeared. He turned, searching desperately, but the hallway beyond was gone. The walls shimmered like liquid silver, endless and impenetrable. Fear gripped him, but it was mingled with fascination. He wanted to step back to flee, yet he could not. It was as if the room itself held him, not with chains or walls, but with an invisible force, gentle yet unyielding. "You cannot leave," Lyra said, her tone calm, almost tender yet firm. "Not yet. The path you seek is not behind you, it lies ahead." He wanted to protest, to insist that he be allowed to leave. Yet something in their presence, something almost magnetic, rooted him to the floor. He felt both terrified and strangely safe. It was a paradox he could not understand, and yet he felt it completely. Saren extended a hand, not toward him, but toward the center of the room. A small orb of light hovered there, spinning slowly. It pulsed with warmth like a heartbeat, and Kale felt an inexplicable longing, as if the orb contained something he had always sought but never known. "This," Saren said softly, "is what brought you here. What you seek, it has been waiting for you, but to touch it, you must first understand us. And to understand us, you must face yourself." The room seemed to pulse with energy, alive with their presence and the orb's glow. Kale realized he was not merely in a room. He was in a space that tested his soul, measured his heart. Every thought, every hesitation, every desire was visible to these women, and in their judgment he sensed both danger and possibility. I don't understand, Kale said, though he knew they could see his confusion. Why me? Why am I here? He wanted to ask more, to question their cryptic words, but the orb of light drew him in, its glow like a gentle pull on his very soul. He felt compelled to move closer, even as his mind screamed caution. As he stepped forward, he realized the truth. He could not leave. Not yet. Not while the women watched, not while the orb awaited, not while his own curiosity demanded he see what lay beyond. The room had become a threshold, a place suspended between worlds, and he had crossed it willingly, unaware of the journey it demanded. Lyra and Saren watched him, their expressions unreadable but full of quiet intensity. Kale's heart raced, a mixture of fear, awe, and a strange, unnameable longing. He knew in that instant that his life had changed forever. The room had claimed him, not with force, but with possibility. And as the last vestige of the hallway vanished behind him, Kale understood the truth of Lyra's words. The path he sought was ahead, and the women who guarded it would not let him leave. The air shimmered with quiet tension. The orb pulsed. And Kale took a deep breath, stepping fully into the room, knowing he was no longer simply a visitor. He was a participant in something far larger than he could yet imagine, a story woven with power, longing, and the delicate threads of fate. The citadel seemed to hold its breath. And somewhere, deep in the shimmer of light and shadow, Kale felt the first stirrings of a bond that would change everything. The door behind him was gone. He was inside, and there was no turning back. Kale's mind raced as he stood in the room, the silver light from the orb spilling softly across the figures of Lyra and Saren. The walls seemed alive, shimmering with a quiet pulse, as though the citadel itself was aware of him and watched his every movement. He had expected danger, perhaps even hostility, but the presence of these two women was something entirely different. Their power was undeniable, yet it carried an elegance, a grace that made it almost impossible to fear them completely. Lyra's eyes, deep as midnight skies, studied him with patient intensity. "You feel it, don't you?" she asked softly. "The balance of this place, the way it hums with energy you cannot yet control. But understanding alone is not enough. You must participate." And he realized that the two women were not simply observers. They were guardians, teachers, and perhaps even something more, something he could not yet name. "I don't understand," he admitted. "What do you mean by participate?" "This room, this citadel, is a place of power," she explained. "It responds to the energy within those who enter. You, Kale, carry a rare spark, an essence that can awaken what has lain dormant for centuries. It binds us and it binds this place, but it also reflects what you bring to it. If you are willing, it can guide you, teach you, even test you. There is no turning back after that." He reached out, and as his fingers brushed the surface, the orb pulsed, sending ripples of light that danced across the room. Suddenly, images flooded his mind, visions of stars swirling, of ancient battles between forces he could barely comprehend, of lives lived and lost in the span of moments. The sensation was overwhelming, and Kale staggered, clutching at the edge of the orb to steady himself. Lyra and Saren moved closer, their forms blurring slightly as if shifting between dimensions. "You see it," Lyra whispered. "The past, the present, and the threads of possibility, all of it is here, all of it responds to you." "I don't know if I can." And within that dance he felt something stirring, a connection to Lyra and Saren, intangible yet undeniable. "You feel it too, don't you?" Kale asked, turning to them. "Something pulling me in. And once changed, there is no returning to what you were before." He had entered this room seeking knowledge, but he now understood that the journey was not about facts or answers, it was about transformation. And transformation required trust, courage, and surrender. I want to try," Kale said finally. "I don't know what it means or what will happen, but I want to understand." That is the first step. Through it all, the bond between them deepened. Lyra's presence was like fire, intense, consuming, yet illuminating. Saren's presence was like water, gentle, soothing, yet powerful in its persistence. Kale felt caught between them, drawn to each in different ways, yet aware that their existence was intertwined, complementary, and necessary. As the day, or what felt like a day, drew to a close, Kale noticed something unsettling. The room, which had seemed safe and beautiful, began to shift subtly. Shadows lengthened, and the light from the orb flickered like a heartbeat struggling to keep pace. "What is happening?" Kale asked, panic rising in his chest. Lyra exchanged a glance with Saren. "It is time for the next test," she said. "The balance you feel, it is fragile. You must understand that power, knowledge, and connection are not without consequence. Every choice ripples through this space and through us. Every thought carries weight." The orb pulsed faster, brighter, and he felt as if the room itself were breathing around him. Saren reached out, placing her hand lightly on the orb. The light steadied, but the sense of tension did not fade. "Do you understand now?" she asked. "Even small actions have meaning, even hesitation has power. Here nothing is trivial." I think I understand, but it's overwhelming. You must feel it, live it, become it." And as he looked at Lyra and Saren, he understood another truth. They were bound to this place as he was, yet their bond with him was deeper than mere circumstance. Something intangible, mysterious, and powerful connected them. A shiver ran down Kale's spine as he felt it fully. He could not leave. Not yet. Not until he had faced whatever the Citadel demanded, and not until he had faced the feelings that stirred inside him: fear, longing, awe, and something else he could not yet name. The orb pulsed again, brighter this time, as if acknowledging his understanding. Lyra's eyes softened, and Saren's hand lingered near the light. Kale knew that the next stage of his journey was about to begin. The room held its breath, the Citadel held its secrets, and the two alien women watched him with eyes that could see into the very depths of his soul. Kale felt a thrill, a fear, and a strange exhilaration. He had entered the wrong room, but perhaps, he thought, there was no wrong room at all. Only rooms meant to change those who dared to enter. And as the light swirled around him, he knew, with a certainty that made his heart pound, that he had stepped onto a path from which there was no turning back. The orb pulsed once more, casting a web of silver light across the room. Lyra and Saren shared a glance, subtle but meaningful. Kale's fate, intertwined with theirs, had begun in earnest. And the Citadel whispered softly that the trials, the tests, and the truths yet to come would challenge every fiber of his being. The room, alive and watching, waited. Kale inhaled sharply and stepped forward. The journey had only just begun. The room had grown quieter, yet the air seemed heavier, as though the very walls were holding their breath. Kale stood in the center, the orb's silvery light pulsing like a heartbeat. Lyra and Saren watched him closely, their forms shimmering softly in the glow. He had learned much since entering the Forbidden Room, yet he felt the weight of knowledge pressing down on him. Every lesson, every vision, every step forward carried with it a choice, and he knew the next one would be the most difficult yet. Lyra's voice broke the silence. "Kale, you have learned to sense the energy, to feel the patterns, to move with the flow of this place. But knowledge alone is not enough. Understanding the past is necessary before you can shape the future. And the past of this place. To free ourselves, we must confront the truth of what bound us here. For that, we were cursed, bound to this room, to this Citadel, until someone with a pure heart could awaken the spark within us. You must be prepared to face the consequences of your choices. The rest will reveal itself as you take the next step." He had come seeking knowledge, but now he realized he was seeking something far more elusive: understanding, redemption, and perhaps connection. Lyra motioned toward the orb. "Place your hands upon it. Feel not just your own energy, but ours as well. The past will speak through you if you allow it, and only by confronting it can the future be changed." His hands trembled as he touched the orb. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, a wave of light and sound washed over him. Memories, not his own, flooded his mind. Visions of Lyra and Saren as emissaries, traveling across worlds, guiding civilizations, laughing, crying, and loving in ways that seemed impossible for mere mortals to understand. Kale gasped. I can feel it. Your lives, your memories." He saw the fear in their eyes, the sorrow, and the helplessness as their freedom slipped away. And then he saw the spark of defiance, the small acts of courage and love that persisted even under the curse. Lyra's voice echoed in his mind. "You see now, the chains were not only of magic, but of fear, regret, and loss. Only by confronting all of this, by facing the shadows within ourselves, can the bonds be broken." I think I understand," Kale whispered. "I see what I must do, but how? It is about intention, purity of heart, and willingness to sacrifice for what is greater than yourself." The orb pulsed brighter, casting intricate patterns of light across the room. Shadows danced along the walls, forming shapes of memories, hopes, and fears. Kale felt himself entwined with Lyra and Saren, their energies blending with his own. It was dizzying, almost overwhelming, yet he held steady, determined to see the process through. As he worked, the room seemed to come alive. The walls shimmered with starlight and the air vibrated with a gentle, rhythmic pulse. Lyra's eyes glimmered with hope, and Saren's soft smile reassured him. Cale realized that this was more than a ritual, it was a communion, a dance of trust and power, a bridge between worlds. Hours, or perhaps moments, for time had little meaning here, passed. Cale felt the weight of every choice he had made, the lessons he had learned, the fears he had faced. And then, just as the light of the orb reached its brightest, a new presence appeared in the room. A shadowy figure, taller than any human, cloaked in darkness with eyes like black holes, stepped into the light. Cale froze. The deity who had cursed Lyra and Saren had come, drawn by the attempt to undo what had been set in motion centuries ago. "You dare to meddle in what is not yours," the figure's voice echoed, cold and powerful. "Mortal, you risk your very existence to free those who defy me." I must," Cale said, his voice firm despite the fear twisting inside him. "They deserve freedom, and I will face whatever comes to help them." "I understand," he said, "and I accept it. I will not turn back, not now. Only then can the chain be broken." With a final, determined breath, Cale directed all his energy, his intention, and his heart into the orb. The light flared brilliantly, blinding and pure, weaving together past, present, and possibility. The shadows in the room dissolved into the radiance, and for a heartbeat the room was filled with silence and peace. Then slowly the orb's light dimmed, leaving behind a soft, steady glow. Lyra and Saren stepped forward, unbound, their forms shimmering with freedom. The air felt lighter, the walls calmer, as if the citadel itself was sighing in relief. Cale fell to his knees, exhausted but alive. He felt the weight of the moment, the victory, the danger, the bond he now shared with the two women. Lyra knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You have done what few could. You have faced yourself, and in doing so, freed us." Relief, awe, gratitude, and something deeper, something like love, stirred in his chest. He had entered the wrong room, expecting knowledge, but he had found connection, redemption, and transformation. And yet, even in that moment of triumph, he sensed the lingering presence of the deity, watching, waiting. He knew this victory was only the beginning. The world outside the room, the citadel, and even the stars themselves would demand more. But Cale no longer feared. He had faced the shadows within himself, and he had emerged stronger, ready for whatever came next. Lyra and Saren helped him to his feet, and together they stood in the room that had been both a prison and a sanctuary. The orb's glow reflected in their eyes, and Cale knew, with a certainty that warmed his heart, that he had found something far greater than knowledge. He had found a connection that could endure, a bond that could transcend fear, time, and even worlds. The room pulsed softly, as if acknowledging the triumph. Cale inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the journey and the promise of what was yet to come. The past had been faced, the curse had been broken, but the story, his story and theirs, was far from over. And somewhere beyond the walls of the citadel, the deity's gaze lingered, a silent warning that the trials yet to come would be even greater, even more demanding, and even more entwined with the hearts of those who dared to defy fate. Cale smiled faintly, resolute. Whatever awaited, he would face it, with Lyra and Saren by his side, and with a heart that had been tested, tempered, and transformed. The journey had only just begun. Cale stood in the center of the room, the orb's soft glow now steady and warm. Lyra and Saren, free at last from the chains that had bound them for centuries, watched him with a mixture of relief, admiration, and something deeper, something that stirred Cale's heart in ways he had never experienced. The citadel was quieter now, almost peaceful, yet an invisible tension lingered in the air. Cale knew this calm was temporary. The presence of the deity, silent and watchful, had not vanished. "We are free," Lyra said softly, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "And yet, freedom is not simple. There are consequences to every act, Cale. The world outside is not the same as when we were bound. Our bond is no longer only between us and this room. It stretches outward across realms, across possibilities. The choices ahead will test us all." Suddenly, the shadows in the room shifted. The deity appeared again, its presence as imposing as before, eyes glowing with a cold, unyielding light. "Mortal," it intoned, "you dare to challenge my will. You dare to bind yourselves to forces you cannot control. Do you understand the cost of defiance?" He looked at Lyra and Saren, feeling the warmth of their trust and the strength of their bond. "I understand," he said firmly, "and we are ready. We will face the consequences together. That your will can withstand the trials of eternity. Only then shall your bond endure." "Focus," Lyra said, her voice calm yet commanding. The trial is not against the deity alone, it is against ourselves. Every doubt, every fear, every hesitation, these are the true challenges. Face them, Kale. Face them with courage, with clarity, and with heart. He thought of the journey that had brought him here, the curiosity that led him to the forbidden room, the trials of learning to sense and channel energy, the visions of Lyra and Saren's past, and the choices he had made to trust them. He felt the pulse of the citadel, the warmth of their presence, and the steady rhythm of the orb's light. The shadows around him began to coalesce into shapes, memories of his own life, his fears, his regrets. He saw moments of hesitation, of cowardice, of loneliness. Faces of people he had loved and lost flashed before him, and a deep ache filled his heart. But alongside the pain came clarity. He had learned, he had grown, and he had chosen. With a deep breath, Kale opened his eyes. The shadows recoiled as he stepped forward, placing his hands once more on the orb. "I will not fear," he said. "I will face what comes, and I will stand with Lyra and Saren no matter the cost." Stars swirled around them, forming vast constellations and cosmic patterns. Lyra and Saren stood beside Kale, their hands resting lightly on the orb, their energy merging with his. The citadel itself seemed alive, responding to their unity, challenging them, and measuring their resolve. Visions of past trials appeared, dangers faced by Lyra and Saren, choices that had led to their curse, moments of love, betrayal, and loss. Kale felt the weight of all these experiences, not as an observer but as a participant. He could feel their pain, their courage, their hope. And he understood in that instant that freedom was never granted. It was earned through trust, sacrifice, and unwavering heart. "Do you see?" Lyra asked, her voice gentle. "This is not only our trial, it is yours, Kale. You must confront the fear within yourself and embrace the strength you did not know you had." He saw his own doubts, the fear of failure, of loss, of inadequacy. But alongside that fear, he felt courage growing, a steady flame fueled by trust, love, and the connection he now shared with Lyra and Saren. "I am ready," he whispered, his voice steady. "I will face it. I will not turn back." Together with Lyra and Saren, he raised his hands to the orb. Light surged outward, filling the room with brilliance. The shadows recoiled, dissolving into silver mist. The visions of fear, doubt, and despair were absorbed into the radiance, transformed into understanding, strength, and clarity. Lyra's eyes shone like stars. "You have done it, Kale," she said. "You have faced yourself, and in doing so, you have proven the bond is true. But remember, the cosmos watches all who defy fate. The choices you make from this day forward will shape worlds." And through it all, he had formed a bond with Lyra and Saren that transcended worlds, time, and understanding. The room settled into calm, the orb now a steady, gentle light. Kale looked at Lyra and Saren, feeling a profound gratitude and something deeper, an affection that had grown quietly, patiently, and with purpose. "You are changed," Lyra said softly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "And so are we, but our journey is not over. The world outside awaits, and we must face it together. Trust, courage, and love, these are the forces that will guide us." The journey had been perilous, the trials unimaginable, but in the end they had emerged stronger, wiser, and bound by a connection that was eternal. And yet, even in this moment of triumph, Kale sensed the vastness of the cosmos beyond the citadel, the unseen eyes of distant worlds, and the silent watch of forces that would test them again. But he no longer feared the unknown. With Lyra and Saren beside him, he was ready for whatever challenges awaited. The citadel's walls shimmered, and the orb cast a gentle glow across the room. Kale took a deep breath, feeling the steady pulse of life and energy around him. He had entered the wrong room, expecting knowledge, but he had found something far greater: connection, trust, courage, and the power to face the unknown. Lyra and Saren smiled at him, their eyes reflecting galaxies and possibilities. Kale knew that whatever awaited them outside, whatever trials the cosmos would place in their path, they would face them together. Their bond, forged in the crucible of trials and strengthened by trust and love, was unbreakable. As they stepped forward, leaving the room that had been both prison and sanctuary, Kale felt a sense of wonder and anticipation. The journey had tested them, transformed them, and bound them together. And as the stars shimmered above the floating citadel, he realized that their story, his story, Lyra's story, Saren's story, was only beginning. The universe awaited. And together they would face it, unafraid, hearts intertwined, spirits unyielding, and destinies forever entwined. The door to the citadel opened, not as a barrier, but as an invitation. Beyond it lay the unknown, the vast expanse of possibilities, and the promise of adventure, discovery, and enduring connection. Kale stepped forward, hand in hand with Lyra and Saren, ready to embrace it all. The stars above seemed to pulse in rhythm with their hearts, a silent witness to the journey they had shared, the trials they had overcome, and the love that now bound them across time and space. The story had reached a turning point, but the adventure was far from over. And somewhere, deep in the vastness of the cosmos, new wonders, challenges, and mysteries awaited them. Together.